What's going on, Soul Tribe? I salute the divinity in you, and welcome to my channel, Alchemist. Justin here, and are you ready to work with those lunar shenanigans? Because you know what, it's an interesting week that we're going through. It starts off nice, and then there's a bit of a mixed bag with Mars and the Moon there, because Mars is now freshly in Scorpio, and it's been a minute since the moon has experienced Mars in Scorpio, since we've experienced Mars in Scorpio, and we're going to get into that here, all of that, and then it's kind of a nice little coasting there, and then we hit a bit of another wall there as it gets towards the end when the moon squares Saturn that we're going to kind of help navigate through. But again, we'll go into all that here in a moment. But if you're new here, again, my name is Justin, and one of the things that I do in this channel is talk about the lunar shenanigans, and that just goes over the astrology of the moon, what sign it's in, what phase it's in, when it happens to be going void of course, and just to get a feel of the week as the moon is having different conversations with the celestial bodies, because the moon is really closely related to the people, to the gathering of the masses. It's the celestial body that's closest to us. So the moon was looked at as responsible for distributing those energies from the other celestial bodies. So it's really important to sync up with that moon there. And I'm going to be covering the week of, let me transition over here. I'm going to be covering the week of September 23rd through the 29th, 2025. And let's go ahead and get into this thing here because we're starting off green. And we love that. Because on a Tuesday, the 23rd of September, the moon is still in Libra. It's in a waxing crescent right now. It's really starting to build up in light there. Moon's just gotten out from under the beams of the sun, so now the moon's smiling at us. And the next aspect that the moon is going to be forming is a square with Big Papa, and that's going to happen exactly at 21 degrees and 30 minutes, and it happens at about 9:01 a.m. That's going to be Pacific time. Now, when you think about just the square aspect, normally that is a bit of a tougher aspect, is when the celestial bodies are about 90 degrees apart from one another, and there's usually this tension or this need for moving stagnation or anything that's become stagnant. But the nice thing is that even though this is a square, it's with Jupiter, who is exalted in the moon's home, and Jupiter is overcoming the moon in this position. So this would be an instance of where, let's say, sometimes I think with the moon in Libra, or even when the moon's in an air sign, the intellect and the emotions sometimes here are really intertwined, considering that the moon deals with how we, the things that we feel. And so if there has been anything that has been maybe kind of throwing you off kilter as of late, the scales have been tipped either way, this could be a time to help Jupiter kind of help balance that stuff out there, for Jupiter to bring in that sense of abundance, to bring in any sort of relief from any sort of harshness, that may be going on in your journey during this period of time. This would be a great time to, Jupiter can represent like alliances and unions. So, getting together with some good friends, or, involved in some sort of like group thing, maybe some sort of like community thing. Maybe you have like some sort of team that you're involved with or something like that, or even some sort of like online group that maybe that you're involved with. But, any ways that can help you feel exalted, like Jupiter, help you feel abundant, bring in the good feels with Cancer, something to help, Jupiter is very nurturing in this energy of Cancer, wants to really give there, restore that sense of faith and trust in, the promise of a brighter tomorrow. So those would be some of the energies that I really would be kind of trying to welcome in, as we're kind of moving through this, day. It's a really kind of nice start to the week. And then we get to a bit of a mixed bag here. Like I was saying, on Wednesday, the 24th of September, the moon is going to move pretty early into Scorpio, and that's going to happen at about 2 a.m., and that's Pacific time. And as you see here, here's the moon in Scorpio. Now, this is interesting for a number of reasons. One, like I was saying, Mars has it's just entered into Scorpio not too long ago. And the last time Mars was in Scorpio, it first entered back in October. It's like October 11th of 2023. And then I think they had their first conjunction with that in, I think it was like the 15th of October. So now it's been a minute since the moon, and since we, as a collective, have felt that Mars and Scorpio energy, which is on by itself not a bad thing, because Scorpio is traditionally ruled by Mars. So Mars is at home here. This is Scorpio is the fixed water sign. They're receptive or yin in nature. And the neat thing I think about this is that there is a deep intuition with Scorpio. You know, Scorpio, when you think about the scorpion, it's able to sense the vibrations in the ground and feel when something's approaching. And it carries its water very close to it. You know, so there is this, and just when you think about just the badass imagery of the scorpion, you know, there is this strength to Scorpio. There's this focus, there's this drive, this intensity, you know, that comes with them. The degree at which they can feel is something incredible, you know, I think something to marvel at. But this is an area where, even though Mars is at home here, this is actually where the moon finds itself in its fall. And when you have a celestial body in its fall, like we have here with not just the moon, the sun, and Venus here, when you have these celestial bodies in their fall, it's like they're a bit lowered. It's not that they can't do anything, but it just makes it so that the significators makes it a little bit harder for them to express them as actively as it could. Because when you think about the moon in Taurus, you know, things are easy. It's in the sign of the benefic. It's cultivated pastures here. Whereas in the waters of Scorpio, things are a bit more intense, a little more focused. And when the moon, when we're thinking about the feelings, if there are any particular emotions that we get stuck in, you know, because that's, I think, the trickiness with the moon in Scorpio is that it's feeling a lot stronger. It's able to not just sense what's going on within itself, but within the collective. Because the moon is so closely related to the people, it's feeling all of the things that are going on around you. You know, it makes you just a little bit just more aware and more attuned to your environment. So this would be one I would just, like, you know, as we're kind of navigating this moon in Scorpio, be aware of that, because, you know, that's what's going to have that moon conjunct Mars. That can be strong feelings, you know, because Mars is still the lesser malefic. And Mars, you know, on a less constructive scale, Mars is just straight up just like misleading, deception, lying. You know, so I would be mindful of any sort of, keep your wits about you. If something doesn't sound right, you know, instead of being reactive to something, fact checking, you know, doing some investigating. You know, that's I think the nice thing about Scorpio is that it's not just going to take something at face value. When something feels off, it's going to verify that. And this is one where I think, you know, with the kind of nice thing about this energy is that the moon is at least in a harmonious conversation with Venus in this, because the nice aspect after this is that the moon's going to form a sextile with Venus. Now, that's when the celestial bodies are about 60 degrees apart, as you see here, the moon being in Scorpio and Venus in Virgo. And now, even though we have these two planets here in their fall, that, again, it doesn't mean they can't do anything. Venus in Virgo is very discerning. You know, it's very, very aware of, like, what it's attracting, the things that, you know, it's the things that can, what's working and what's not, you know, what's harmonious and what can we, Venus and Virgo will find the ways of making things harmonious. You know, it's, I think it's a great problem solving energy for Venus. So if this is one where you're noticing that there has been a shift in people, this can be where it's like, okay, let's be practical about this. Let's be mindful of where we're maybe getting overwhelmed with emotions, where we're being driven by them. Because, again, you know, pay attention to the news and how things move you, you know, just kind of follow that, because otherwise I think that it can lead to a bit of trickiness. But again, Venus is trying to bring some harmony into this to help us get settled into these new types of feelings here. So just some things to think about there. And then see, it's kind of nice there. We kind of breathe through this and we work together, because then on a Thursday, the 25th of September, the moon is going to form a trine with Big Papa. And so we love that. You know, the trines are when the celestial bodies are 120 degrees apart. There's flow, there's ease. It's the most beneficial aspect here. So even though the moon may be kind of struggling here a little bit in, you know, in Scorpio, it's got the support from both Jupiter and Venus here. So this is something, again, I think that is, you know, even it's a nice way to ease into this, ease in kind of to this energy here. And we'll have that support from Big Papa whenever the moon, you know, is going through here for over the next year while Jupiter's in Cancer here. So that's at least a little bit of, I think, kind of takes some of the bite off of what would otherwise be kind of like maybe like an intense kind of moon in Scorpio there. But again, this could be just like learning to, because Scorpio, I think what can happen sometimes is that they get, when you think about just like intense emotions, you just think about all the challenging emotions. This is all the positive emotions too, the love, the passion, the all of those kind of those good feels, the feeling hopeful, you know. Again, I think with fixed signs is maybe just being mindful of just like extremes, but I find where if there's a particular even kind of like emotion that you're wanting to kind of channel with this during this period of time, maybe you're looking for some sort of like inspiration and things, again, I think that the moon here can learn how certain things really affect it on a deeper level in Scorpio, to tune into deeper facets of yourself, to learn of yourself, get a wholer picture of who you are there. So I kind of like this Thursday energy here. And now, we move into Friday, and it's this 26th of September. And before the moon moves into Sagittarius, the moon is going to form a trine with Saturn. And this is another really kind of nice one there, where it's like, okay, we've gotten the feel of this moon in Scorpio now, with Mars being back at home. And this is something where, let me kind of backtrack. With that moon going through Scorpio, if you're like myself and have a lot of fixed placements, this may be a more active period of time for you. That would be Scorpio, Aquarius, Taurus, and Leo. But with this moon trining Saturn here, this could be where we've been doing that work with this moon, for getting familiar with this stuff, and now we're not so, that weight of Saturn, that kind of like heaviness, the hindrances, the blockages, and things like that, they feel more surmountable. They could feel like something that, okay, this could be a chance for me to feel like myself again, to feel like I'm getting things back on track, because later the moon is going to move from Scorpio into Sagittarius, and this is going to happen at about 2:37 p.m. and again, that's Pacific time. And then shortly after, the moon will form a sextile with the sun. And what I like about when the moon and the sun are in harmonious conversation is that this is a chance for, the sun is that sense of light, that life, that vitality, the thing that gives us purpose, and then, the thing that guides the people. And I think that this could be just a great time to just, again, get back in rhythm with oneself, an opportunity to do some things, do some Saturn work, do some stuff, like do some things that maybe work in the short term. This could be like starting a new health routine. Maybe you're going to start walking more. Maybe it's just like, doing more yoga. Maybe it's changing the foods that you're eating. Maybe it's getting more sleep, whatever that is. Starting those short-term routines to build up some kind of long-term things down the line there, to have these real positive benefits, I think, with Saturn, to kind of help mitigate some of the harshness that Saturn could otherwise bring there. And this is something too, when we think about Sagittarius, and another thing that I want to talk about this, because here's a chart that has the moon in Sag. Sag is the mutable fire sign. They're active or young in nature, and they're ruled by Big Papa, Jupiter. And now that puts, with the moon entering there, that puts Jupiter and the moon in a mutual reception. Now, they're not forming by aspects, which would be a lot stronger, like when the moon's in Pisces. But this is still good too, having each other, that moon and Jupiter, those houses are going to be very closely connected there, having those two kind of interchange in those houses. There's that sense of flow, that's kind of nice there with this aspect. But this, to me, having gone through, what maybe have been a bit of an adjustment period in Scorpio, now the fires are lit. This is the time to get out there, to try some new things, to set, I think, I think the one thing with Sagittarius is just making sure to set realistic expectations. I could think that we want to get to where, we'll have these 5-year plans or even year plans, and want to get to the end result today, or try to get it before the end of the week. And it's just like making sure to just set realistic expectations, I think, with the moon and Sag. But this could be too, where if you have a lot of mutable placements, this is going to be Sagittarius, Pisces, Gemini, or Virgo. This period may be a little bit more active for you. But the nice thing about this is on Saturday, on the 27th of September, the moon's going to be forming a square with the lovely Venus, and that's going to happen exactly at 10 degrees and 4 minutes at about 11 a.m. Pacific time. And again, it's similar to like how that was happening with that square in Libra with Jupiter. This is a sense for if you're trying to get something adjusted or trying to get something started, you're wanting to make a change in some sort of aspect, bring in some more harmony, kind of clean up some things, I think that the moon, kind of squaring Venus could help you to bring talk to people who you notice that are doing those things that you're wanting to do, following different, people who inspire you. This could be different coaches, or looking at, maybe you see people like, oh, I love that this group in my neighborhood's always walking. Maybe I want to go be a part of that. That gets me outside, that gets me communicated with people. Something that takes like a little bit of effort there. Again, it takes a little challenge, but it's going to have this reward with Venus there. I think that maybe one thing with Venus and Virgo is maybe being too nitpicky. Thinking, looking at all the things that like, okay, sure, there's its benefits, but oh, that means I have to get up early, I have to do this, I have to do that. Like, and almost talking yourself out of it. I think sometimes maybe could, trying to let perfect be the enemy of good, I think can happen with Venus and Virgo. So, but otherwise, I really kind of like this day here too. Kind of a nice sort of getting any sort of routine started, and making, with all this mutable energy, making any sort of like shifts or changes that you're wanting to do, and then have that Mars and Scorpio help you lock in, kind of channel that energy there. So just something to think about there, because then we get to Sunday, and now we hit a bit of red. On the 28th of September, the moon is first going to form a sextile with Mercury, which is like, okay, we've wrapped our head around the idea of something. It seems possible. We might even be kind of talking about it a little bit, really kind of entertaining the idea, making plans, fitting it into the schedule. But then something happens when the moon gets to about, this is going to happen late in the evening Pacific time, but about 10:43 p.m. the moon will have that exact aspect with Saturn. And, Moon Saturn aspects could just be feeling the blockages, be feeling restrained in some sort of way. And this could be where you're trying to make a shift, for example, but then, let's say trying to work in more time for movement, but then let's say, in doing that, you still have, let's say, you maybe got kids that you're watching, you have maybe your job that you're doing, you have other obligations that are needed to be taken care of. And so this could be feeling that all of the hindrances trying to deter you. Saturn can be a sluggish energy. It can promote this sense of laziness, and it can cause a depression too, because it can get to where it's like, oh my gosh, I've maybe missed a day or something, and now it's like, now you're feeling beating up yourself, and instead of getting back on track, you get stuck in a loop. That's what Saturn can do. And I think with now Mars moving into Scorpio as well, that's something where we want to be mindful again about getting stuck in things, especially stuck in emotions. Because the neat little thing, this is something that we'll be talking later on as we move through the month. But Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter are in this open, like kind of wide water, grand water trine right now, and it's going to get more exact as Mars kind of gets closer to Saturn and Jupiter. But this would be a time to help you kind of feel through what changes are getting ready to come. Because Saturn in Pisces is bringing some long-term shifts here, how we're going to be feeling through these energies here. And if you find yourself getting stuck or, in any sort of process in this, one thing I wanted to mention with Mars being here is that if you, let's say, for example, this is like anger, there's been you've noticed a lot of frustration, the moon's in Sag, so that can be fiery, that can lead to, again, kind of like explosive behavior if the moon in Sag is feeling stuck, but one way I would say with that is, finding like a punching bag. I'm one, I have a lot of fire, and sometimes I even get, like I have Mars in the first house, so it gets riled up sometimes, and I have it in Leo, so it'll like just kind of, I'll hold that heat, and that thing that needs to move, especially when Mars is in a fixed sign. In Scorpio, it's just like how when you think about the Scorpion, it's got the toxins that are building up in it. It's got to remove that stuff. You get that stuff out of there. So I would say buying like a punching bag, or doing some sort of maybe some running, or just, maybe some cardio, something to help just move that energy, dance around a little bit, put on a song and just go ham, Or another really good one, working with different foods, sometimes thinking about what the planets signified. They had certain tastes associated with them. And with Mars can deal with things like bitter in taste. And I found that especially like dark chocolate, that's a really good one to help if you've been moving through any sort of like stuck emotions or things with that, or even with like Saturn, anything like astringent, like a sour sort of taste can help, maybe even kind of help move through those, so to when the malefics are kind of stirring up some trouble there. So just something to think about with that square with Saturn. And then right as, that moon has that tough conversation with Saturn, we get into a Monday, the 29th of September. At about 2:54 a.m., the moon moves into Capricorn. And if you're looking at the chart, there's the moon in Cap. And now that's going to shift the focus. If you have a lot of cardinal placements, that's going to be Capricorn, Aries, Cancer, or Libra. This moon may be a bit more active in you for this period of time. But the moon first is going to, it's just going to, hold on one second. Okay, we're back. Because I was like, what is the moon forming a sextile with? With Mars. So the moon's going to first form a sextile with Mars. And again, the sextiles they're like the trines, but they require more initiative, just a bit more effort to get the juice out of them. So when we're thinking about moon Mars things, this could be where, okay, we had that square with Saturn. We saw the block. This could be where it's like, are we going to let that block deter us, or are we going to take that as challenge accepted? Because that can be what Mars can do when you work constructively. It can help motivate you. It can help you to stay focused, to keep the drive, even when things feel hopeless, even when things feel, because sometimes I think too, the mind can be a tricky thing. We can find different ways to kind of talk ourselves out of things, especially when things require change and take us out of our comfort zone in a sense. So that's what I feel this kind of one example way this Mars sextile could potentially work out there. And then we get to the first quarter, which I think is an appropriate kind of end to this. That's going to happen at exactly 4:53 p.m. Pacific time, and that's when the moon squares the sun. And so now there's this challenge between that inner light and what we're feeling. It's like, do we let that, what we just felt with Mars or with Saturn, do we let that throw us off kilter, or do we just like kind of like, okay, that sucks, I don't want to have to wait that long. But you know what, if I have to wait anyway, then let me go ahead, what am I going to be doing while I'm waiting? Like that could be a way of kind of going about this, thinking about the transits when we're kind of working with this energy. And that kind of pretty much takes us through the week. But that's something that I think about too, when I'm talking about people, when we're working through different transits, and you see like there's a little tough pocket that's getting ready to happen. I was just having a conversation with someone about this, because I was saying like, I have towards the end of like October, so it's kind of looking ahead, and it's like, oh, that looks towards the end, it looks like a little tough there, and it's activating things in like my relationships house. So I'm like, hey, let's get ahead of this. Let's handle any sort of, and it got me thinking about where do my relationships stand right now? What are some ones that I know are problematic that like, am I ready to deal with it, or is that going to be is that going to be the problem later on? And it's like, we'll see. But it does give you a chance to, if it's going to happen anyway, to get ahead of it, to try to mitigate it as much as possible. And that's what it's like kind of working with these transits each week. If we're getting a feel, if we know that Sunday's going to be a harsh one, then let's build up some things so that it can get us through that hump on Sunday. Because then one thing I wanted to mention too with the first quarter, that's we're halfway through till we get to the new moon, and by the next week we'll be at the full moon. And so again, this is the waxing time is usually a great time for growing, and the first quarter is usually kind of like that, like, hey, if you've been thinking about something, let's get a move on. Let's start put some steps behind it. So I kind of like this energy overall. But it definitely just kind of a new feel as we got Mars in Scorpio there, and just getting adjusted to all the different energies there as we kind of move through this. But we got this. We got this. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. But that's all I got for you there. And if this is something where if you want to see how this is working more personally in your chart, down in the description box, or first, down in the comment section, let us know. Let me know how you're navigating through these transits, how this has been shown. What have you noticed that has been coming up in the collective? Because that could be a nice thing too when we're going through, where it's like, oh, if the moon's in Capricorn, for example, oh yeah, people with cardinal placements. I noticed my Capricorn friends or Cancer friends or Aries friends seem to be a little more agitated or just a little more antsy or something like that. So let us know how this has been showing up for you. But also, if you want to know how this is working more personally in your chart, maybe you're in a moon year, so tracking the moons is going to be very important. Down in the description box, there is a link to book a consultation with me, whether it's navigating your natal chart, working with the transits, or if you want to pick any sort of like electional days, whether it's for planning a trip, signing a contract, buying a home, a car, planning a marriage, whatever that might be looking like for you. That's all that's down there in the description box for you. And if you have any questions about the services that I provide, my email's down there too, so definitely feel free to reach out. And then there's a couple of links down there for, one of them is for the Celestial News, which is going to be Celestial News Monthly now going forward, but it's going to, that just covers the sun and the other classical planets, where they're going to be transiting, what signs are going to be most affected, and how to most practically work with those energies. And then I have this series of videos that I'm doing that talk about different planetary placements in different signs in different houses, and just my thoughts around them and what are some things to look at as you're kind of navigating those if you're in your natal chart. So that's all available for you there in different playlists. And if you see ones that I haven't done, definitely feel free to comment. And I'm working on the queue right now. I've been busy, busy here the last couple weeks, but I'm going to be starting to get ahead on those. So definitely, if you have any requests that you want to see, leave that in the comment section there. And be looking out, if you've made any requests, be looking out for these videos over the next week. But that's all I got for you there. So until next time, stay mindful out there. You keep eyes on that moon, and I will catch you on the next one later.